Truth Revolution.
Hey, Reason, I'm Faith. Hey, Faith, I'm Reason. Glad to meet you. No, we've actually been friends for a long, long time. Welcome to Truth Revolution. This is actually where Faith and Reason meet. Not like they haven't ever met before, but they're old friends. So, I'm Pastor Dave. That's Pastor Jeff. We're from Revolution Church in Salina, Kansas.
No, Dave, I think it's safe to say that we are the Tinder of Faith and Reason.
We are.
Yeah, there we go.
We hooked him up right here. Come on.
Just kidding. All right. Hey, we got a very special show today. We have a guest who we love having on the show.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
He's back. Dave, what's going on?
Well, Fuzz Rana is the Vice President of Research and Apologetics at Reasons to Believe, one of our favorite places, seriously. He's the author of several groundbreaking books, including Who Was Adam?, Creating Life in the Lab,
Yes.
The Cell's Design,
Yes.
and Dinosaur Blood and the Age of the Earth.
Good one.
He holds a PhD in chemistry with an emphasis in biochemistry from Ohio University.
All right. Welcome, Dr. Rana. Glad to have you.
Hey, Jeff and Dave, good to be with you again.
Yeah, it's always good to have you on the show.
Fun.
Especially, you're a biochemist, and we are looking at a topic today. You wrote a blog post that I went, wow, that is cool. Nanotechnology inside of people and doing medical stuff, all kinds of different things. And how this actually can show God's existence. This is fascinating to me. So would you just go ahead and maybe give us a little lowdown on nanotechnology and what scientists are doing right now?
Yeah, well, nanotechnology is really one of the hot areas in science, and it's a research program where the vision is to create machines and devices at a molecular scale. So if you think of it's like engineering engineering molecules to make machines that could then carry out, again, operations at a microscopic scale. And this is an area that has medical implications, but also implications for manufacturing and new technology development along those lines, where everybody's looking at miniaturizing our technological capabilities, again, to a molecular scale.
Wow. Okay. And it's just fascinating. So You're actually talking about making robots, so to speak, that are the size of a few hundred molecules, a few hundred atoms?
That's exactly right. So if your listeners think about like a manufacturing operation, let's say an assembly line that puts together automobiles, everybody's probably seen those robotic arms that are doing different parts of the manufacturing operation. Well, what these researchers did at the University of Manchester is built a molecular scale version of that, where they made a molecule that consists of 150 atoms, but it literally is a molecular scale robotics arm.
Wow.
That has like this platform that's, again, made up of atoms, and then extending up from the platform at a right angle is a rod-like structure that then bends at a right angle, that has an arm that can swivel back and forth between the two ends of the platform, and that arm can grab a molecule. And what they can then do is position the molecule that the robot is grabbing on either end of the two platforms by adding the right types of chemicals to the solution. And by putting that molecule close to either end of the platform, they can then control the chemical reactions that are taking place with high precision to basically produce molecules in an assembly line-like manner, just like we would produce automobiles in a manufacturing plant, in a stepwise manner. But again, with high precision interactions that are dictated by the robotic arm.
Wow. Okay.
That's nuts.
So are we talking like science fiction movies here where you might get like these nano robots who go inside your arteries and clean your arteries out, like they scrape them out? Or is it always going to be they're there to deliver a chemical reaction, or what exactly? How far does this go?
Well, these particular robots are designed to help organic chemists make new molecules, and molecules that they currently can't make because they don't have that level of control over molecules, being able to precisely position them, at an atom's level of resolution. But there are other scientists working in nanotechnology that are looking at doing the things that you're describing, where you would deliver molecules or medicine to particular cells. You might puncture holes in cell membranes of cancer cells, things like that. So that what you're describing is part of the whole nanotechnology package. But what these researchers are doing probably wouldn't have that application, but there's other researchers that are doing those very types of things.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, what we find interesting here and what we kind of want to get into today, in your article, you say the researchers were motivated to try to achieve this goal because molecular machines with this capacity exist inside the cell. So inside you and me, there's already machines doing things like this.
That's exactly right. I mean, what you're seeing with this research is, in my view, science at its very best. These are some of the best, most talented organic chemists in the world that employed incredibly elaborate, strategies and protocols to synthesize these particular molecules. But when we look inside the cell, there are all these molecules that are machines that are carrying out all kinds of operations inside the cell. So, for example, one of my favorite molecular machines in the cell is something called the F1F0 ATPase. And no, I didn't just have an utterance in tongues, but that's basically a nomenclature that biochemists give to this massive molecular machine that's embedded in the membranes of organelles called mitochondria. And if you remember back to your biology days, mitochondria are sometimes called the powerhouse of the cell. They're producing the energy that the cell uses to drive its operations. Well, this F1F0 ATPase is right at the heart of that energy production. It consists of this pie-like structure that's embedded in the membrane that is a rotary motor. And it actually will use the flow of electrical current across the cell membrane to drive the rotation of this rotor. And as it rotates, that rotation is translated through a molecular rod called that's a drive shaft. And that rod has a knob at a right angle that's a cam that will crash into this complex that is a turbine, basically. And as it rotates around and that cam crashes into different parts of the protein, it causes mechanical displacements. You can kind of think of it like a piston motion at that point. And that mechanical displacement drives a chemical reaction that harvests energy in the form of a molecule that then can be used to drive other cellular processes. Well, this is an incredibly elaborate rotary motor system that even has a stator that kind of holds the turbine in place. And so it's a direct analog to rotary motors that we would build as human designers, but the efficiency of this system is near 100%. It's incredible in terms of its efficiency, and it's just an unbelievably elegant system that it typifies what we see inside the cell. I could go on and on and on describing molecular machines that have lever arms and hinges and ball races and chase type systems. There's a whole ensemble of machines like this that are working collaboratively to carry out different operations in the cell.
Now, what you're talking about, the F1F0, I've not heard that before, but is it what you're describing? It sounds very much like the bacterial flagellum. Is that kind of the same thing?
Yes, it's like the bacteria flagellum, but it is a rotary motor just like the bacteria flagellum. So there's a lot of similarities. But for me, the F1F0 ATPase is of real interest because this protein is essentially ubiquitous in nature. Every organism has versions of the F1F0 ATPase in its repertoire, and it is one of the most important protein complexes in nature because of its role in harvesting energy.
Gotcha.
And what's interesting is that there are variations of this machine in the cell that perform other operations. So, for example, in photosynthetic bacteria, cyanobacteria, they have to be able to alter between photosynthesis and nitrogen fixation between the night and the day. They have to toggle back and forth between those two operations to survive. The way they do it is with literally a molecular watch that's inside the cell that's built around the same principle as the F1, F0 ATPase, where you have this turbine-like structure, and that turbine-like structure interacts with a component that has a scissor-like shape that can open and close. When it's opened, the pieces of this molecular scissor are touching the turbine, and as they do that, it steps around that turbine bit by bit by bit, chemically modifying each component of the turbine. When it completes the full rotation and all the subunits are modified, the thing falls apart, and that now tells the cell's machinery time to go from photosynthesis to nitrogen fixation, and then the clock reassembles itself in the next 12 hours to be poised to start keeping time again, to keep track of photosynthesis. So when the clock reassembles, nitrogen fixation stops and the cell switches back to photosynthesis.
What?
But here we have a mechanical watch that's built around the same principles as this F1, F0 ATPase, that in a sense it's a rotary motor, but now it's a timekeeping device. And so really, really fascinating stuff. That, brings to mind the watchmaker argument of William Paley, right? Now we see literally this watch that's inside the cell of cyanobacteria that's keeping time, and that timekeeping function is critical for the survival of cyanobacteria.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about the teleological argument, right? All designs imply a designer,
right?
And there's great design in the universe, therefore there must be a great designer of the universe.
Right, and the crazy thing is that I'm sitting here thinking there really is nothing new under the sun. God already created that particular piece of machinery, and then, billions of years later, some guy creates a watch piece that keeps time, and we think, hey, we're cool.
Not just a watch piece. I mean, while you were describing this, what I'm thinking, we live in Kansas, and I drive out west of our town, and we see these huge,
windmills?
Not windmills, turbines. These huge wind turbines. And like what was going through my mind when you described this was these huge wind turbines that are functioning during the day, but at nighttime they disassemble themselves and turn into a coal plant because there's not enough wind at night.
Right.
And then in the morning they reassemble into a wind turbine.
That's a good point. That would be awesome.
That's kind of what is happening inside of our cells, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what to me is eerie is how similar these designs are to the technology that we would invent as human designers. That to me is really, really provocative. And of course, as Christians, we believe that we're made in God's image. And being made in God's image, we are mini creators of sorts. And it makes sense that if we really if our very essence is ultimately reflecting the image of God, that what we do then as many creators is going to somehow echo what God has already done. And so the fact that we're seeing, in cyanobacteria, these machines that are so reminiscent to watches that we would invent, in the 16th and 17th century is really provocative, particularly given that cyanobacteria have been on Earth as far back as we can go in the fossil record. Evidence for cyanobacteria go back about 3.5 billion years into Earth's history.
Jeez. Okay, so
it's amazing that already in those cells were the technology that we later would invent when we come on the scene.
So yeah, I mean, okay, we got about 40 seconds here before the break, but so humanity has existed for 140,000 years, or I don't know, give me an estimate, how long?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, okay, 140,000 years.
So after 140,000 years of achievement, we have started to create things that are somewhat close to the machines that already existed inside our bodies, that already existed inside bodies billions of years ago. That's
exactly right. And again, when you just start thinking through the implications of that, there's so many directions you can go, but it's just mind-blowing.
That is, okay, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this break with Dr. Rana. We're going to look at some of the other implications. It's not just that, wow, we're complicated and so someone made us.
Right.
It gets into what we designed as humans too, and we're also going to do Bible contradiction. Come on out to Revolution Church. We'll be right back.
Truth Revolution.
I am a machine. And so are you.
Yes. I've always said that about you, though, Dave.
Yeah,
You
I look
are
like a machine, don't I?
You do, man.
Blubbery machine.
No, you got a six-pack of Dr.
whatever,
Pepper in the office.
Nice.
Anyway, so we're talking about human machines, molecular robots. We've got Dr. Rana on from Reasons to Believe, who, by the way, has written a couple books very close to the topic we're looking at today. One of them was Who Was Adam? Now, I have this book. Dr. Rana, just give us a quick summary of Who Was Adam?
Well, the point of Who Was Adam is to show how advances that are happening in anthropology, many of which are discovered within the context of the evolutionary paradigm, actually, ironically, support a biblical perspective of human origins. And the other book that I think you're going to talk about, The Cell's Design, is a book where we talk about how discoveries in biochemistry point to the reality of a creator.
So that's The Cell's Design, as well as Who Was Adam. I own both of those books. You should own both those books.
And we're going to link to them from the website.
Great. We're going to link to them. So we were talking about F1F0, the bacterial flagellum, although apparently F1F0 is much cooler. I'm going to have to look into that. So we're talking about our capacity, as actually you said in your article, our capacity to investigate and understand nature through science and then turn that insight into technologies is unique to human beings. I find this interesting. You talked in your article a little bit about Neanderthals, and don't they make machines, and didn't they make tools too?
Yeah, well, I mean, Neanderthals are interesting creatures that, in my view, display some level of intelligence and emotional capability. So they were producing fairly crude tools, but their tool usage really was stagnant. Over the span of their existence on Earth, there really was no real advance in their technology. It appeared coincidental with Neanderthals and remained, in a sense, unchanged. There's a lot of people who will claim Neanderthals had the capacity to make art, that they made music, they made jewelry, that they buried their dead, that they mastered fire, that they were using plants for medicinal purposes. But when you actually press into those claims, what you end up discovering is that those claims really don't withstand scientific scrutiny. Again, Neanderthals showed some limited intelligence and emotional capability, but in my view, they were cognitively inferior to modern humans. We stand distinct and apart from all creatures on the planet, including Neanderthals.
Now, this is just a little bit of a sidestep, but for a lot of years, people thought that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals or some of these other ones had interbred. And I read some articles recently saying that they might think that might not be the case now. Kind of where do you guys stand on that?
Yeah, well, to me, the question of interbreeding is still an open scientific question. And, my preference would be that there was no interbreeding. But even if there was interbreeding, there are ways that I think you can handle that theologically that doesn't really harm or do damage to the Christian faith. And it, if anything, it's just more evidence for human depravity.
Really? Okay, good. All right. So, back to this idea. So we human beings are really the only beings that we're aware of on Earth that, or on any planet, that have the capacity to create something like this. And after 140,000 years, we've finally gotten to the place where we've started to design some of these machines. But isn't what we create, superior to what's inside the body now? Is it not as superior? Where is it on terms of equating with what's inside the body?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we're making in the lab is laughable compared to the elegance of the machines that we see inside the cell. And this is not to denigrate the work of researchers, let's say in this case from the University of Manchester, who designed this incredible molecular robot. I mean, to me, again, it's what they've done is science at its very best.
Yes.
But it's striking to me, again, how cumbersome and crude this system is compared to what we see inside the cell. And just on that basis alone, the question it begs the question: how could you argue that these highly sophisticated complex machines inside the cell are the product of unguided evolution, when the best minds in the world struggle to make something that's even a crude facsimile of what we see inside the cell.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's such a good question.
Right.
It just makes it boggles your mind to think how anybody could think that this was just a random happening, that our existence, the machines that exist inside of us, just happened to come together. It just was, just a few successions of good luck and good movements, put these random machines together, and it just can't happen like that. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. And I think the further we go into the molecular biology, the farther we dig, the deeper we dig into it, the more things we discover, I think the more we're going to understand that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think that's a good point too, because, a few hundred years ago, you probably could have looked at the body and said, it's complicated, but it's not that complicated. Right. But I mean, we've come a long way in a few hundred years, haven't we?
Oh, we sure have. In Darwin's day, I mean, the way people viewed the cell was essentially a cell envelope with kind of jelly-like material inside. Huh. Well, we now know what that jelly-like material consists of, and the complexity is beyond descriptive capabilities, really. I mean, you've got these incredibly sophisticated machines, but what's more interesting is that these machines are working in this highly orchestrated, concerted manner to carry out critical functions, and that the cell can respond to changes that are happening in the environment and then suddenly shut down one operation and kick up other operations that are completely appropriate for what the cell needs, given what's happening in the environment or the stage that it's at in the course of the cell cycle. So it's like imagining a city like Los Angeles, and everything that happens in the city of Los Angeles simultaneously. That is about the closest thing I can think of that would mimic what's going on inside the cell. Yes. But inside the cell, the efficiency of those operations is, again, far above what you see in a well-functioning city. I wouldn't say like Los Angeles, because I question whether Los Angeles is a well-functioning city. Yes. But it's interesting, if you live in a place like I live in Los Angeles, where you've got these freeway systems where the traffic is just horrendous, you've got traffic engineers that are working to try to figure out how to get traffic flow to work well. Well, there are comparable processes inside the cell, and basically metabolic reactions that are taking place that essentially are like a complex freeway system where molecules are being converted one into another through these network of interactions. And traffic engineers are now realizing, by studying what's happening in metabolic systems and the way those metabolic systems flow, we can gain understanding that actually can be applied to traffic engineering, because what's going on in the cell is so optimized towards that end.
Oh my goodness.
So we're stealing.
We're
stealing from God.
The best ideas. All right. Hey, we got to answer Bible contradiction. Let's do that.
Bible contradiction.
All right, Bible contradiction today brought to you by infidels.org.
Okay.
And this is just one verse, Jeff.
One verse?
One verse for a Bible contradiction.
Okay.
What's up with that? Revelation 1:7. Behold, he is coming with clouds, and every eye will see him, even they who pierced him. So infidels.org goes on to say, Revelations 1:7 says that when Jesus comes with the clouds, everybody on earth will see him. Some Christians have said that this will be literally fulfilled because the event will be broadcast by satellite over the world's TV stations. We interrupt this broadcast for blah, blah, blah. Actually, the passage reflects the flat earth cosmology of the time, as does the four corners of the earth in Revelation 7:1 and 20:8.
Okay, so our correct acronym, we're going to use the D for dialect. Mm-hmm. What type of language, what genre are they speaking in? And when this is talking about coming on the clouds, is he talking literally, or is he giving a figurative message? Well, he's giving a figurative message, right? This is a judgment thing, not a visual thing. In the Bible, if the people at infidels.org were going to read all the things about clouds, they would hear 2 Samuel 22. Dark clouds are under his feet, dark rain clouds, the rebuke of the Lord, right? It has to do with judgment. Psalm 97, cloud and thick darkness surround him. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne. Jeremiah 4, look, he advances like the clouds, his chariots come like a whirlwind. Woe to us, we are ruined. And I got a whole bunch more listed here. All throughout the Bible, whenever it's talking about clouds, it's talking about judgment. When it says Jesus comes on the clouds, This doesn't mean he's literally going to ride a cloud like a Care Bear.
Right.
It means that he's coming with judgment. And when it says, "And all eyes will see him," this is just a colloquial phrase, meaning everyone is going to be aware of this. It doesn't mean that the earth is flat and everyone sees this.
Right. Isaiah 40:22 says he sits enthroned above the circle of the earth. And in looking at MacArthur's study Bible, he says that the word circle is applicable to the spherical form of the earth above which God sits.
Yeah.
So it's not like the Bible says the earth is flat.
Exactly. So, hey, anything you want to add to that, Fuzz?
No, boy, that was great.
Yeah.
Good job.
All right. And that's our Bible contradiction today.
Bible contradiction.
We handled that like machines.
Almost as though we've been designed to do that very thing. Hey, Dr. Rana, we got about 90 seconds. What would you say the bottom line is when you're looking at these molecular robots that we've finally been able to produce? What does that tell you about God's existence?
Well, I mean, to me, it clearly points to the fact that the world around us and life itself.
Sorry, could you say that part again? It broke up for a second.
Yeah. To me, what this is telling us is that life must be the product of a creator, must be the product of a mind, and that it gives us clear evidence that we are exceptional as human beings in our capacity to produce molecular robots that mimic what we see inside the cell.
Yes, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's fun.
And
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
once again, for those listeners, his books, The Cell's Design, as well as Who Was Adam, we're going to link to those at truthrevolution.tv.
Right.
And you got to check this stuff out, man. This is so interesting.
Right.
Also, we're going to link to his blog at reasons.org. He's with Reasons to Believe. Fascinating organization. Great stuff. I'm there all the time on their website. I'm getting all their books.
Right.
And you should too. It's good stuff.
That's good information.
All right, come on out to Revolution Church. Revo.church is our website.